Imagine that you have 100 participants that are registered for a marathon. Let's call this marathon the Montebass Academy Marathon. Okay? And let's say that you have competitor A, whose goal is simply to finish the marathon, while you have competitor B, C, and D, who each respectively have the goal of winning the marathon. Now, the other competitors or participants have goals or objectives ranging from placing second or third, maybe even just finishing the marathon like competitor A, or some are just there to say that they participated in the prestigious Montebass Academy's marathon. Okay? Now let's fast forward and let's discuss some results. Let's say you have competitor A who finished the marathon but had a time of 6 hours. Now, for those who might be unaware, the global average finishing time for a marathon is 4 hours and 28 minutes, I believe. Competitor B had a finishing time of 4 hours and 10 minutes, yet competitor C had a finishing time of 3 hours and 30 minutes. Now, unfortunately, competitor D had to leave the race early due to an injury, and the remaining participants had finishing times ranging in different orders. However, no one had a time greater than 6 hours, and no one had a faster time than 3 hours and 30 minutes, which was competitor C. Now I want you to ponder that illustration while I do a little bit of introductions and kind of get into the nature of my speech today. My name is Christopher Bass, and I am one of the co-founders of Montebass Academy. At Montebass Academy, we seek to take an applied science approach to the study and realization of winning and its sisters' achievement and success. Our mission at Montebass Academy is to inspire, educate, and empower individuals to purposely win. We live out this mission by developing speeches, writing papers, hosting workshops with the aim of changing the thinking regarding winning, achievement, and success. But more importantly, that leads to the attainment of those sustainable, repeatable skills necessary for one to intentionally achieve that which they set out to achieve. In other words, to win purposely. Now, my purpose today is not really to discuss, a 30-point, process for winning, why winning is important, some strategies for winning. But it's really, again, to get you to think differently about the concept of winning. And I hope to do that by doing three things. One, making sure that I'm defining winning so that we're operating from the same page. Two, discussing some of the principal reasons for why winning is important. And three, illustrating some of the broad steps that one can begin to execute today to affect more winning in his or her life. So to begin, I want to begin the process of getting on the same page as it relates to how we're defining winning. And our research indicates that if you do an online search or a dictionary search, you will come to find that there are a number of different meanings as it relates to winning. But all of those definitions have some similarities. They either involve gaining, resulting, or relating to being victorious in a contest or competition. A while back, I read an article by a psychologist named Jeffrey Spencer, who penned an article in Psychology Today entitled, "Why winning matters. And in that article, Mr. Spencer go on to define winning as nothing more than the attainment of a premeditated goal. Now, these definitions are very important to us at Monte Bass Academy because when we look at winning as having three components. We look at it as, the attainment of a premeditative goal, but that goal has as its object winning, which also implies competition. And what we mean by competition is that, let me give you some examples. We understand that if we are running for president of the United States, if we are engaged in a debate, or if we're running a marathon, we know that we're likely to be competing against another individual, group of individuals who also has the goal of winning that competition, that contest, right? But what if your goal is simply to lose weight? What if your goal is to earn $100,000 a year more in terms of personal income? Or what if your goal is simply to be a better parent by doing certain actions? Is there a competitor in that sense? Our position is yes. That competitor in those examples is your lesser self. That self that is less risky. That self that is fearful. That self that looks for any and all reasons why you not only won't be successful, but why it will fail. That self is always in competition with your better self. That self that desires to win, that craves to be better, that is determined to win against all odds. So when we speak about winning, again, we speak about having or attaining a premeditative goal that involves competition with the intentions of overcoming all or being victorious over any and all competitors, even if that competitor is yourself. Okay? Now, when we also look at winning, we also want to look at winning in terms of understanding why it is important. And there are two principal reasons that I'm going to discuss today. The first reason is society places a great value on winners. I mean, just think about this for a moment, right? History books are filled with the successes of winners and their feats. Statues are built in memory and in honor of those winners. Hall of Fames are erected for generations to see and remember the accomplishments and successes of winners. That is not the same for losers. In essence, winners get to write their own destinies. Many might say they have the first right of refusal, right? But according to Ian H. Roberts in his book, Winner's Effect, winning is not just important because of what society says, but winning is important because of what it does to us chemically and mentally. Winning changes the chemistry of the brain, according to Mr. Robertson. It makes us more focused. It makes us smarter, more confident, more aggressive. The person who notches up more wins tend to expect winning as the most likely outcome of similar situations. Think about this. The more I win, the more I come to expect to win, the more wins that I experience. And that holds true for losing. Losing changes the chemistry of the brain. Right? It makes us less confident. We begin to doubt ourselves and our ability. We become more risk averse. We become more passive. Right? The more I lose, the more I come to expect to lose in the next similar situation. But we don't necessarily have to think about winning and losing in the abstract concept. We can apply this directly in our own personal lives, right? Just think about this for a moment. How do we feel when we win? And how do we respond in the next similar situation? By the same token, how do we respond when we lose? Or how do we feel when we lose? And how do we respond in the next similar situation? Now think of repeated wins and repeated losses. So in essence, winning is important because of not just what society or the value that society places on winning. Winning is important because of the expectations it sets up and the likely outcome of those expectations. Make sense? Now that we have an understanding of how Montabas Academy uses winning and why winning is important, I next want to pivot to my final point of outlining some broad basic steps that a person can take to begin the process of becoming a winner in their lives. And there are really four main points that I want to touch upon. The first one is the actual goal setting itself. Now remember from my example of winning earlier, my definition of winning earlier. Winning is simply not a matter about finishing, completing, or participating. Winning has to have the object of winning over a competitor, even if that competitor is yourself. The second step is planning, meaning the designing of strategies and tactics that one will use to bring about the attainment of his premeditated goal, which again has winning as its object. The third is execution, meaning the deliberate actions that we take on a day-to-day basis to bring about or to effect that change in our lives. The ultimate outcome being winning. And the fourth and final point is the review, which is the systematic process of evaluating our progress so that we can know what's working and what's not working, so that we can modify that which is not working and build upon that which is working, so that we can continue to move along our pathway of achieving our ultimate aim, which is to attain our premeditative goal that has winning as its object, and defeating any competitor that stands in our way, even if that competitor is ourselves. So, understanding those four broad steps, I wanted to also, consider that there are some other points to consider here as well. There's time constraints, there's resource constraints, and there's also contingency plans. But the goal for the speech today was not to discuss an exhaustive list of any and everything that a person can and should do in order to bring about winning in his or her life. That is really outside the scope of our presentation or my speech today. What is within the scope of my presentation today is begin to get you to think differently about the concept of winning. And hopefully I've accomplished that by defining how we use winning at Montabas Academy, highlighting two principal reasons for why winning is important, both from a societal standpoint as well as from a personal standpoint, but then outlining the four broad steps that one can begin to execute today to bring about more winning in his or her life. Because, let's go back to my initial example, or my earlier, when I started the speech. Because now we can ask some questions and probably have some similar answers. Do we have a clear winner? Are there many different types of winners? Do we have a clear loser? Again, are there many different types of losers? How do we label competitor D that had to leave the race due to an injury? How do we label the other competitors who never intended to win the marathon, but whose only goal was to either finish or to participate. I think that if we go back to my second point on why winning is important, it is important because of what it essentially does to us chemically and mentally, right? It sets up an expectation, and the likely outcome of those expectations are very important. Because remember, the more we're winning, the more we expect to win, the more wins we experience. And who among us does not desire to be a winner consistently in all aspects of our lives?